Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Commentary is Magic's Deck Discourse series on today, Sunday, July 23rd. I am, as always, Grandpa's.
I am Emperor Bugle.
Big Cheese?
One of these days it isn't going to be as always, but I'm Aracat.
Are you going to transform?
No. No, I am not. I might be a changeling, though. Give me your love.
I don't
All
think
of
anyone
it.
would honestly be surprised by that.
All of it.
Halibut?
Halibut. He's actually a fish.
No, I just want all of your love for our queen.
Best queen?
Best queen.
Flurry?
No.
Flurry.
We don't talk about that. We don't talk about the thing at the place.
Anyway, who's got hype for regionals? I do.
I don't know.
A bit.
I haven't even built my
What?
deck.
Oh, come on. Really?
Really?
Wow.
Why
That's,
not?
So, not only do I have to build my deck, I have to build 3 other decks because we have 5 random not pony people crashing our regionals.
Why you do this?
That's kind of amazing.
I don't know why they are, but the store owner is like, hey, Nation and Luke, do you want to build some decks for these people who don't play ponies? We're like, okay.
I'm super glad that they're going to be participating. They may have chosen a more friendly event to begin with.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they know how to play other card games, but
Well, that's fair,
Yeah.
but still. No, that's good, though. More people.
but like, it sounds like they don't really have interest in playing the game, but they have interest in playing at regionals. I don't understand. It's weird.
All the hype for new players, though.
Sure, absolutely.
Why not?
And that's part of the reason why this series is going on and why we're continuing it, is being able to provide opportunities for players to see decks and explanations of these decks they might not otherwise normally run into, can give them inspiration to play these games in their own environments, with their own local players, or alter them as they see fit. Last week we ran a highlight on a pair of decks called Hot Wings, and there's been a little bit of discussion about this.
More than we expected, to be perfectly honest.
And that was really encouraging to see, and part of the reason why we're here today.
More decks.
More decks. Deck. Goose.
You can't deck out in this game.
I mean, you can, you just don't lose.
Well, I mean, sure.
I mean, you might still lose. You have nothing to flip.
Your chances of winning are diminished. But yeah.
Well, your chances of winning are either diminished or greatly increased, depending
on your strategy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that's very true. So, since we're going to try something a little bit different this week, let's go ahead and jump in here. The Deck Discourse series, as we said, allows us to kind of show and help teach a couple of new deck styles that people may not be familiar with. Everyone has a style they prefer. We have local players who enjoy playing aggro every single time. There was a player who played farming for basically 2 years. Cheese would play pile if he still could.
True.
I mean, it's
I mean,
not
he
wrong,
can.
right? I mean, sure he can, but not penny pile.
No, he cannot play Penny Pile outside of Nightmare.
And I will always be the one to force janky combo. Even in Silver Spanner. I laugh at your
Always in
restrictions.
Silver Spanner.
Always in Silver Spanner, that's right.
No, at this point, you're treating it as a professional challenge to run combo.
Yeah, basically. So this time around, instead of focusing on a pair of decks built around the same strategy, which was aggro last week, we're going to throw a couple of new opportunities at players, focusing on a farming deck and a control deck.
We've got Twilight, and we've got Mod. Can you guess which one belongs to which deck?
No.
You're wrong. Well, maybe not.
It's
You might already know.
Mod. Mod Farms, right? She's
Mod
a
Farms.
rock farmer.
And Twilight plays control because she's purple.
Yeah, right?
That's right.
Not so much in this case.
So
It
much?
turns out you can kind of do some wonky things.
But my entire view of the world.
Has been turned upside down. Have I just shattered your mind?
Quite possibly like my entire deck, but
I hope not. It's just a new deck. Anyway, the two decks we have to talk about today are affectionately called Canterlot U Ag Studies
And classic rock.
And to get this party started, I guess, I'll draw 3 cards. And then we'll start with Canterlot.
Did you pay 1?
No, I had Rainbow Shine on the field. I exhausted her.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that Rainbow Shine. Okay.
So let's take a look here at a deck called Canterlot U Ag Studies, which is basically Twilight, or rather Professor Twilight, purple farming.
Dr. Twilight, PhD.
She has her own unique way to farm.
She does.
Might-
Look at her
might be
teaching
a little
Apple
odd.
Bloom.
Yeah,
See, even
this is
Apple
how you
Bloom is-
farm, with files.
Vials and chemicals and exact precise measurements.
Apple Bloom seems skeptical, Grandpa's.
I
Can
mean,
can you prove her methods have weight?
Apple Bloom's been raised in a family that does farming in one very particular way. And that's the thing. This is a question that might come up upon first seeing this deck or first hearing about it, is why am I going to farm with purple when I could play control? And the answer is every color has its strengths in this game, right? And even within the same archetype, every color has its own strengths. Look at farming, right? We've seen farming in multiple colors over the years. Orange has been the most stable, the most reliable, because orange typically has characters that have tremendous power and can usually get a bunch of extra flips. So if you're playing orange farming, you are very, very likely to be able to win your face-offs when you challenge. Blue has also done farming, especially in decks like One Punch Man last year. And blue's big advantage was speed, being able to use Thunder Lane to not only get huge power in the middle of a face-off, but then to start a DFO afterwards and just constantly accelerate that way. And purple also has a strength. Purple's strength in this case is, very much like Trixie, it has tricks up its sleeve.
A few.
No pine cones, though.
I better
No.
believe.
How about wheels?
We don't know.
We don't
No
trust
wheels.
wheels.
So, I'm glad to see purple farming again because some people may recall back in the olden days, purple was the OG farmer.
I mean, that's true. You had Premier Twilight, who did farm in big bombs and then moved into antisocial farming back in Canterlot Nights.
Yep.
But that was a little bit different.
It is different. Mostly because of a little word called immediate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Immediate is definitely an important word. Back in the day, Twilight farming basically meant that you were just relying on huge numbers of events and actually more closely resembled some of the orange farming decks that we see now that rely on extra flips to beat up troublemakers. Especially with the prevalence of putting AJ in cardboard boxes.
Big bombs for days.
Basically. But now, Professor Twilight actually is the key to this entire deck. The strategy in Canterlot U Ag Studies, or just Ag Studies, is you're leveraging your AT advantage to be able to defeat troublemakers, and then use remaining AT that you have saved up to slow down opposing aggro decks or otherwise disrupt combo. And against a farming mirror, you might spend your extra AT to force your opponent to lose face-offs, and then simply challenge on your turn and generate even more additional AT. There's fewer opportunities for interaction with control, but one of the key advantages in this deck is once you actually get Twilight flipped, you're reliant on almost nothing other than just gaining AT at the start of your turn, and other cards if you have them. And that's one of the deck's big strengths.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'll shove Twilight in a box. Twilight's at home. That's not doing anything. Okay, I'll move all your characters home. Well, I'll make one at the start of my Troublemaker phase and challenge. Well, stop that.
No.
Yeah, it can get pretty nasty.
Purple is tricksy.
Purple is tricksy. And that's one of the things that's fun, is when you can have a deck where you don't have to dedicate as many deck slots to the deck being able to do whatever it is you want. You can start including fun things like Magical Misfire and Sneak Attack and all kinds of other pieces that are there. So in this case, purple farming is using a small, select suite of friends, most of which are designed to help you get Twilight flipped at the beginning with Concerning Cutie Mark, and then otherwise provide you some form of AT generation. In this case, Truffle is the single most reliable form of AT generation because, spoiler alert, people like to move characters, unless there's a Flurry Heart on the field, and then people hate moving characters.
People squint at Flurry and go, maybe I'll save my AT.
Yeah, I have done that more times than I would care to admit. Apart from that, though, it's almost entirely events and troublemakers, and that's one of the things that makes this deck so much fun to play and so easy to pick up as well, ignoring, of course, perhaps the cost barrier to entry, since there are quite a few epic troublemakers you need to be able to run a farming deck.
It's only, 12 ultra rares in here?
I mean, yeah. 2 Nightmare Stars, 3 Queen Chrysalis, 3 Starlight Glimmers, 2 Trixies. So that's what? 10? Yeah, it's 10 troublemakers.
A few.
10 ultra rares. It's more than 10 troublemakers.
10 ultra rares, 14 troublemakers. So because the deck can dedicate a very specific set to getting the most value out of its troublemakers and then getting the most value out of its friends, it's free to run all these other events, which can do things like move all your opponent's characters home and put your opponent's low power characters on top of their deck, and even disrupt combo by banishing their entire discard pile.
Don't do that.
Yes.
You should totally just
we like our
leave my
discard
combo
piles.
alone and just let it go off.
I should,
It'll be
and I
okay.
totally will, by starting with Equalist Propaganda.
That's fine.
I mean, sometimes it's fine.
That's what Spring Step's for.
Sure. So let's take a look at some of the key cards in this deck. By far, one of the trixiest and trickiest, I guess it doesn't actually have Trixie on it, but, you know, is Bookish Backup. Bookish Backup is one of the big advantages that purple farming might have over a control deck, specifically a control deck that might rely on forced movement for opposing characters. If you look at decks like One Punch Mare, or even worse, AJ farming, one of the biggest weaknesses they have is they've got to get their main up to problems so that they can have a character there to challenge, and so they can actually stand a chance of beating the troublemaker. Purple doesn't care about that, because Twilight's ability can be activated multiple times in the same turn. Just because it says immediate and pay 1 AT does not mean that it says pay 1 AT, do this only once each turn. That means as long as we have AT to spend, as long as we have at least one body at the troublemaker's problem to be able to start the initial face-off with, we don't actually care what happens to that body afterwards. The flip average in this deck is very, very high, despite the fact that it's running some low-power friends. And with 3 AT, you can reduce any troublemaker in this deck to 0 power until the end of the face-off. That means unless your opponent gets very lucky and flips a higher power card than you can basically just win even if all you've got is a piddly little 2-power token. And Bookish Backup is also a great method of having power at a problem and getting around the initial frighten of running villains. Yes, there are a large number of non-villain epic troublemakers in here, 2 copies of Nightmare Star and 3 copies of Starlight Glimmer. But there's also 3 copies of Aoi Zodal and some Queen Chrysalis and some Trixies. And in those situations, having a token in play immediately, or even having a friend like Truffle or Cheerily or Zakora, might not be the best option, because then they're getting frightened and they're not actually contributing any power. Bookish Backup also allows you to recover from your opponent possibly starting a DFO while you had a face-down troublemaker and you not having any characters to challenge their next turn. Definitely one of the all-stars of this deck, and even a card that you can use to get Twilight flipped.
Yeah, I kind of feel that this is one of the absolute linchpins of the deck. If Bookish Backup did not exist, I think the deck would suffer a fair bit. Like, it does everything that the deck wants, except actually beating the villain.
Yes, I suppose that's true, but it does help.
It helps, yes.
So
Yeah, it's just very, very, very good card in this deck. If you are looking at cards to replace, don't look at this one.
look away, avert your
So,
eyes.
so you're saying Zippo hates this card.
Zippo actually doesn't, because Zippo has immediate speed movement.
Yeah, I guess you can change the timing of when you do things, but
With Zippo, what you really want to try to do is to have your main there already, and then when you move to the start of your challenge step, when they move your main character home, then you play Bookish Backup.
Yeah.
yeah.
Force them to either you will bypass their defenses, or you will force them to use extra resources.
Right. And let's actually talk about that for a moment, because that's a key playing strategy in a number of decks. Not just farming and not just control or combo, just everything in general. When you have cards or effects that you can activate in response to something your opponent might be doing, or to prevent your opponent from getting some desired result, it is almost always going to be advantageous for you to do that at the last possible moment. There's no reason to spend resources, whether they be action tokens, cards in hand, friends, whatever it may be, until you absolutely have to. So there's no reason to play a Bookish Backup during your main phase to get a friend there when you can just do that on your next turn, because, hey, now you can save AT in the event that your opponent has something unexpected that you need to respond to. Likewise, there's no reason to use Twilight's ability to adjust the power of a Troublemaker until after you go to your flips to see if that's even going to matter.
Yeah, there's no sense in wasting AT if you don't know that you need to spend it.
Right. This is why the common turn one play is don't do anything, even though you know you want to put your main to a problem, because maybe you want to put it at the other problem or whatever. You want to see what the opponent is doing.
Right. You generally need a very good reason if you're going to be taking an action before it's going to provide you any benefit. You know, you see the number of players that will start off with moving their main character up to their starting problem in the hopes of confronting next turn, only for a deck like Hot Wings to come in and DFO on turn 2.
Now you're down to AT. Nothing
Right.
happened.
Exactly. So always, well, almost always, wait until you absolutely need to do something.
Unless you have a good reason not to, yeah.
Sure. Let's move on to the next key card in this deck, Sneak Attack. So I know that Feathers somewhere is looking down on this list disapprovingly, because there are not like 21 Troublemakers in it, and I'm sorry, Feathers. I know I've done wrong by you. But if it's any consolation, these are almost Troublemakers.
They basically are.
They sure were troublemakers in
I mean-
Tantabuse.
They cost 1 and flip for 5. That's a troublemaker, right?
It's pretty close. So Sneak Attack is great because not only does it allow you to refuel your hand full of epics that you need to challenge for a very low AT cost, and not only can you get this card for free off of Spell Showdown if you happen to be on that problem, but you can cherry pick the exact Troublemaker you want to fight. If you're low on AT and you just want to keep the point train rolling, just grab an Aoizotl. You're probably not going to need to spend a lot of AT to be able to beat him. If you absolutely need to close out the game as soon as possible and you've got the AT to spare, you might want to grab a Queen Chrysalis. If you're up against some kind of control deck that's using F-Stop and cracking the case, I don't know what kind of deck would be doing that. Bugle.
Don't know.
Then you might want to end up grabbing something like Nightmare Star, or, you know, if you're up against a deck that's using an incredibly overpowered AJ, Starlight Glimmer might be a great opportunity. It's really just going to be up to you. And that's what Sneak Attack provides, is deck thinning. Tutoring is very strong, even if it's situational like this.
There's also another use with Sneak Attack.
And that is, of course, to be able to shuffle your deck when you see key cards that are
Oh, well,
on the
okay,
bottom.
there is that use too, but it wasn't the one I was thinking of. I was thinking of the mind games. Play Sneak Attack, find a troublemaker, then play 2 troublemakers, and they know one of those is the one that you probably searched for. They don't know which one. Alternatively, Sneak Attack for a troublemaker, then play a different troublemaker just to, so they are expecting something and it winds up not being that thing.
Sure. If you're going to be playing Sneak Attack and you're going to be playing troublemakers in the same turn, play the Sneak Attack first. The
Yes.
extra little bit of confusion that you might cause will probably be worth it.
Yeah, I have sorry, I can see a reality where you want to say Sneak Attack for a Nightmare Star and then play a villain. So they think, oh, well, that's a Nightmare Star. I can safely move my characters there.
I can totally move some stuff. Oh, God.
And then, whoops.
That's actually a Trixie.
Yeah, that, oops.
Oops. So let's move on to the next one. As we mentioned before, Twilight's big thing is all about AT generation. You know what's really good? Gaining AT for not having to spend any AT.
I don't know about that. I wouldn't know anything about
And
that.
you know what else this deck tends to do?
What else does it tend to do?
It beats up troublemakers.
It does beat up troublemakers. Boy, if only there were a card that would trigger on beating up troublemakers to give you AT without having to spend AT. Let's go back to the past here and look at an oldie but goodie, Spike Take a Letter. It's basically Heart's Desire for purple if you're farming.
Which, well, I
With
guess it
no
happened in
initial
Premier.
investment, though, which
Right.
is the nice part.
Yeah.
Yes. So this will only work when you defeat a troublemaker. That means if your opponent fails to defeat your troublemaker and they're challenging it, unfortunately, you can't use Spike Take a Letter. But, as Beagle said, it does not require an initial investment like Heart's Desire does. It's not subject to removal like Heart's Desire is. And it even flips for more. And
It does have wreck, but you don't care about that in this deck.
No, you do not. Seems like a pretty good trade-off. So one of the things that's really fun to do is spend an amount of AT necessary to beat a troublemaker and then just immediately recoup it with Spike Take a Letter. Your opponent might think that, well, at least I'm making them spend resources because I played a Star Scroll Research. And yeah, maybe that's true. But having the one turn where you play 3 Spike Take a Letters after defeating a troublemaker and all of a sudden you're at almost a permanent 6 AT advantage over your opponent is pretty disgusting.
Yeah, a little bit.
I think Professor Twilight should have had Studious too, just for good measure. That would have been fine, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
like,
Studious on
how
mains, there's no
often-
problem there.
How often is she going to be at the problem?
About half the time, I'd say.
Well, we're also giving her Ember's ability while we're at it. I mean,
Oh, so just always becomes in face-offs?
yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
we'll give her Diligent too. Why not? This
Yeah,
doesn't sound
Diligent
like a
2
good
is
main.
good. Can she exhaust to move for free?
No, she
Sure.
exhausts to make
Sure.
the opponent lose an AT when they gain an AT.
Yes.
Yes.
This sounds like a good main. We should like have an.
Pitch this to Interplay.
Yeah.
I'm sure that'd be great.
Okay. Cool. I got my create a card.
And when you confront a problem, you can move her home to score its bonus points times 5.
Sure. Seems fair and balanced.
Got my create a card right here.
Back to the cards at hand then. Spike Take a Letter is something that is a little limited. We don't have a method of recursion in this deck, and that's honestly okay. We don't want to waste AT getting the few cards that we have back here. The deck is designed to basically play a troublemaker and defeat a troublemaker every single turn, and just keep doing that until you reach 15. And it's very, very consistent at doing so. So the small little boosts that you get from Spike Take a Letter are more than enough, and you definitely don't need to incorporate anything else.
Yeah, so you're not going for the long game here.
No. This deck will win surprisingly quickly, provided Twilight can actually get flipped. And just to make sure that you've always got a steady flow of AT coming in, and to kind of slow your opponent down a little bit, let's take a look at one of the friends that's not just used to flip Twilight over, which would be Zecora brewing a plan. I love this card so much.
Eccentric 3, like what?
Eccentric 3 in purple,
Yeah.
with AT generation tacked onto it.
This was really stupid in pre-release.
It was.
And it's a prison pony, too. Like,
It is a prison pony.
what's not to love here?
What's not to love is that we've got a bunch of 3s on here, but then we also have a 2, and it's not symmetrical, and that makes it garbage, and you should never play this card.
You.
It
Hush
also has
you.
a 4 and a 1 and a 0. Like, it's all over the place.
This is pauper legal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably not okay.
This is probably like the 3rd best eccentric card in the game, and it's not even pink.
I might place it higher than that. We'll have to see.
Yeah, what are the
Third?
other two? I mean, like, there's...
Minuet and Sonata?
Yeah.
I'd place this over Minuet, maybe.
I don't know.
Minuet
Minuet
requires investment.
Minuet. Well, to be fair, the eccentric isn't the important part on the Minuet.
No, the eccentric is kind of the important part on Zecora, but
Yeah.
she's also in a color that's more paired with stopping the opponent from confronting. And that is one of the things that we also have in this deck. A list of cards that can slow down the opponent's confront. Cutie Pox Scare, Napcakes. I mean, there are a few tools here that can make things slower for the opponent.
1 or 2.
I mean, it's purple. It just wouldn't be purple unless you were packing.
There's
Study
also the
session,
troublemakers. I hear those can get in the way.
I mean, sure. But that's another thing to keep in mind as well, is you may want to be careful spending extra troublemakers unless you're sure your opponent's not going to have a method of interacting with them, or even worse, beating them up, just because those are your fuel. If you run short of troublemakers, the deck can stall. You shouldn't run short of troublemakers. You've got a ton, and you've got the sneak attacks as well. But just something to consider. So Zecora Brewing a Plan does a great job of providing us a method of slowing down our opponent's aggro strategies, which is really something that we're trying to outrace. And in the process of doing so, helping us gain extra AT. You think about what you saw last week with Hot Wings, with the amount of cards that are present and have strong interactions with Bluna, right? But Bluna was often designed to be very, very precise in the exact amount of power that you need to confront problems by being as efficient as possible. Throwing Eccentric 3 on that makes that much more difficult to do. And combine that with Truffle when your opponent's moving all their characters, and now you're even better.
I mean, for preference, Hot Wings would just be like, it's a nice prison pony.
I'll take that.
I
Use it
mean-
to confront, then throw it at your other friend.
I mean, sure, that's obviously going to end up happening.
But it's not always going
But,
to happen.
yeah,
That's
but-
the important part.
They did have to spend resources to work around it, so...
Exactly. Just because you're not expecting a temporary barrier that you have set up to stick around for an incredibly long period of time doesn't mean it's not worth it. If you have a Zecora at the other problem and you're going to flip a non-epic trouble, or you're going to flip a non-villain troublemaker their next turn, that may still be worth the 3 AT, even if you think your opponent might have answers in their deck to remove it. If they don't have answers, you get rewarded. If they do have answers, well, you still burnt those resources. And I'd rather them burn it on a Zecora than on something more important like a Sunset Shimmer. Although Zecora is pretty good. And let's look at one more key friend in here. There's only one copy of this friend, but she's kind of a doozy, and for very similar reasons as Bookish Backup. And that's Princess Luna, Web of Dreams.
Hello, I would like to pay 0 to flip 7 and also have to get the opportunity to play a 1-cost 2-power friend at immediate speed.
Yeah, seems okay, right? So
A
Princess Luna effectively turns all your events into Bookish Backup as well. And she comes with Meticulous. Now, she's only 2 power, so we have to be very careful about how many are included in the deck. and she's 2 rec, so we can't use her to help us flip Twilight at the beginning, which is a crucial play. But it's still worth having at least 1 copy here in the event that you're running up against a deck like, say, Zippo, that needs to use its resources very judiciously. Because now all of a sudden you can do things like nap kicks or Star Sword Research and use those in conjunction with Bookish Backup. Heck, why not play a 2-cost Bookish Backup and then spend 1 to put another token into play there?
Your Bookish Backup has backup?
Basically. Bookish Backup, backup.
It's the
Good.
appendix. Or the 2nd edition. With foreword by Professor Sparkle.
So those are a few of the key decks that help Canterlot U Ag Studies really perform well. And like I said, once you kind of see the flow of the deck, once you get into the habit of, I'm going to play a Troublemaker, I'm going to challenge it next turn and then play another Troublemaker, I'm going to repeat this process until you make me do something else. It's pretty easy to just get into the groove with this. If you've got the cards, try this, give it a shot. It has several key strengths. Its consistency is very, very strong. With a few of the meticulous cards that you have here, as well as the AT generation and your ability to just neuter Troublemaker's power entirely, you're going to win almost every Troublemaker face-off you get yourself into, unless something has gone horribly, horribly wrong. Once Twilight actually gets flipped, as Cheese and Bugle and Aura have mentioned, you also don't need Twilight at that problem to activate her ability. Yes, she's one of the best targets to have there because she really can't be mucked with. But even if she is there, your opponent putting her in a cardboard box still doesn't do a whole lot because your flip average is still so high that you can just say, I'll just win off the flips. And if worse comes to worse, play a Star Sword Research.
Or paying the AT as well.
Well, in conjunction with paying the AT, I mean. Since any Troublemaker can be reduced to 0 power for the cost of 3 AT.
Yeah. 0 versus 0 is a good place to be when you have high flips.
Yep. The deck has a number of cards that will help it generate AT advantage, and that's very, very good because not only is AT advantage used in your offensive plays, but it can also be used defensively. If your opponent does decide to spend resources to stop you from winning a face-off, and you're worried about them taking away your Troublemaker on the next turn by challenging it themselves, hey, if you still got that AT saved up because you didn't spend it until you were absolutely sure you could win, then you can just use that to protect your own Troublemaker, or heck, even stop your opponent from farming their own. AJ's not very happy with this matchup.
Yeah, unless she gets to the point where she has actually gotten to steamroll. Like if she's already
give me
at
30
12
power.
or whatever, she's less caring. But yeah.
And then the last big strength that this deck has is it doesn't rely on a lot of its friends once Twilight is flipped. As long as you've got a body somewhere to challenge Troublemakers, you're in pretty good shape. Now, of course, the friends can help.
Yeah, even frightened friends can challenge. Do remember.
There are a couple of weaknesses here, though. The biggest one, and I think you'll see this for a number of decks going ahead, is you absolutely must flip Twilight, or this deck does not function. That means that if you're going up against DJ, and you're going second, it's time to start praying. No snips and snails. If you can get Twilight flipped, you're okay. But preventing your opponent preventing you from flipping Twilight by starting a DFO can slow you down. It's part of the reason why all of these problems are also confrontable in this deck, and many of them are at a lower power than what you might otherwise see. Is you really want to be sure you can flip Twilight even if something goes wrong.
So,
Cracking the sorry, go ahead.
So if you're going up against Hot Wings, do you still run Concerning Cutie Mark?
Oh yeah, I would still end up running Concerning Cutie Mark even over Equalist Propaganda because you're really not saving any more turns than you would. It's going to take you an extra turn to confront Equalist Propaganda.
Yeah.
It's also going to take your opponent an extra turn to get the extra power there, or they'll just have the nuts.
They're actually more likely to DFO it away than Concerning Cutie Mark. Or Simpsons Nails if it's the vinyl one.
I mean, that's true. And cracking the case is also a little bit of a problem here, just because it's, again, one of those cards that your opponent can kind of delay until the absolute last possible minute on. Okay, cool. You've spent your AT, Twilight, to reduce this Troublemaker's power to 0. Well, now I'm going to go ahead and banish it, and you gain nothing.
You did still win a Troublemaker face-off. You still can... No, it specifically says defeat, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does say defeat. So
yeah,
even your Spike Taker letters are shut off.
You're just like, wow, that sucked.
And even though there are a number of good disruptive events in here, including resource removal, always pack your resource removal. I don't know how many times we have to say this. Pack resource
It
removal.
is worth saying every time. It's one of those rules, like, look both ways before crossing the street. Sure, everyone knows it, but what if they don't?
Right, exactly. And so this other weakness is, even though it has a number of these events, it doesn't really have any way to tutor up specific ones, nor does it have a great source of card draw outside of just using your extra AT to draw. So if you really, really, really need to find that one Cutie Pox scare, it might just not be there, which means you just need to be judicious with your AT usage and your Troublemakers.
Yeah, what's going to happen is you're going to flip it, so then you're going to play Sneak Attack, and then next turn you'll flip it, and you'll play Sneak Attack, and then you'll flip it, and you'll look at your deck, because it's clearly trolling you at this point.
Yep. With that said, though, I think that's basically going to wrap up Canterlot Ag Studies. It's a fun new take on farming that I definitely recommend people try. It's very consistent. It's easy to understand how it functions. And if you can get over the initial barrier of finding those epic troublemakers, you're in really good shape.
Yeah, if you like it, maybe you can take it to regionals this week. I mean, get some practice in first, obviously, but...
No.
We
You
don't
just
practice.
you show up, run your deck, and
Get first place?
yeah, exactly. After not having played for like a year or whatever it was, and
Oh, yeah, that. Thanks, Conrad. Well, from there, let's move on from farming to a different archetype, and let's get some tunes going here. Bugle, what have you got for us?
We've got classic rock. Yeah.
Loves classic rock. Freebird!
Security.
So, classic rock, you might have some questions. Like, why is Maud in a control deck? Isn't she a farming main? Well, okay, so there's a couple big reasons here. First off, she is very easy to flip. She is one of the few mains in the game that can flip for 1 AT on first turn of the game. No questions asked. Granted, you need the correct card in your hand, but 1 AT is pretty cheap to flip mains. Very few mains can flip for 1. And once she's flipped, she's kind of scary, actually. Like, aggro decks, they hate going against Applejack because Applejack gets really big and they can't win those face-offs, let alone by 5. And yeah, Maud just sits there at a problem and goes, start that face-off. You got 5 power? I got 7. That sounds good. Let's do this. And if they aren't starting face-offs, or if you've got some troublemakers in play, she can just sit at a problem, score you a point every turn, and you don't have to invest more AT into scoring points. And, that's something Control likes to do, not invest AT in scoring points. So she's actually kind of the best main here, because you don't need to win face-offs to make her big. She's just already big, as long as you have cards in your discard, and you're going to have cards in your discard. Now, the other big question you might be asking is, why white? Like, orange-white is not a color combination we've seen very frequently. Haven't really seen it since Absolute Discord, and we barely even saw it there. And the answer is, white has a lot of disruption right now. Like, it can disrupt the board, it can disrupt hand, it can disrupt just about anything. And especially this one little orange-white card that, Sweetie Belle.
Yeah, she was kind of the terror of pre-release.
yeah. Vaguely
Some
annoying.
people got 2 of her in pre-releases, and
Some people got 2 of her in pre-releases with tender taps as well, and that was not okay. Sonnet.
Oh, jeez. So
Are you?
yeah,
Mod?
so there's just a lot of really good things that white brings to the table, and yeah, so we've got some orange-white control, and a little bit of purple, a little bit.
Because if you're going to be in orange, why are you not playing Factory Organizer?
Well,
Basically.
yeah. It's like trading traditions, Factory Jack, turn 1. Yeah.
Now, I know that we can't see the entire deck list here, but there's also 2 Changeling Mimics that I'm sure you'll be talking about.
Yes, so there are in fact some Changeling Mimics at the bottom there as well. There there are a lot of 1-ofs and 2-ofs in this deck. This is
Oh.
yet another toolbox.
See,
Wait.
they're just hiding right now. See that white blank space? That's where they actually
That's
are.
the Changeling?
Ah,
Yeah.
that's pretty good at
There are
blending
no
in.
change. Hold on, we've been over this. There are no changelings in this deck.
It's a perfectly calm, ordinary day.
That's right.
Yes. Mod is sitting on a throne. Don't pay any attention to what kind of throne this is.
It's a throne of the bones of her enemies if we're going by 2014.
Oh dear.
Anyway,
So
Yeah.
let's like with a deck with this many different cards, different unique cards rather. It's hard to pick out a few key ones, but there's some key ones here. First and foremost is probably Factory Jack. Control decks like their AT.
Name me a deck that doesn't like AT.
Eh.
I'm also trying
Exactly.
to think of one. We'll get back to you on that.
That's
the
what I thought.
Scootaloo Orange doesn't need AT after like turn 4. It just moves big friends for 0 AT all the time. It's
I
great.
suppose that's true.
But anyway, so Factory Jack is pretty key here because she's one of the friends that we can play to flip mod early. And she's great because you can play her turn 1 and then any resource in your deck and you flipped mod. And that's 3 AT worth of cards that you played for 2 AT on turn 1. That's pretty nice. And she keeps giving you AT later, and she the purple rec can come in handy for playing things like Gyro or whatever if they do get rid of the trading traditions, which is probably going to happen, let's be honest. But yeah, AT. Goodness. Everyone likes AT.
Can confirm.
The next major key card is Sweetie Belle. Because Sweetie Belle does a lot of things for this deck.
Little monster.
She is actually technically one of the namesakes of the deck. Traditional, classic, same thing. Kinda.
Kinda.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a stretch. Also, this isn't Sweetie Belle. This is Thrakkerzod, let's be real.
I guess, yeah, sure. So Thrakkerzod here does a lot of things. If you don't have all of your card types in your discard, she can help you get them by looking at the top of your deck and going, oh, hey, there's that Trollmaker that I need in my discard. Let's put it there. There. Now mod's bigger. You're usually not going to use her for this, though, because you're usually going to target the opponent's deck because you're going to go, oh, hey, here's that card that you've been digging for. No, you can't have it. It's gone.
Can't pass.
Here, you wanted entry, right? You wanted to draw entry for the 4th time in a row?
Kind highs.
Here, have all of the entry. All of it. So, she... Basically, her card selection for the opponent is very, very powerful. Plus, you know what the opponent is drawing. And in multiples, it gets even scarier because, sure, they draw that first card, then you use the other one immediately to go, oh, here, you can have this card. So even if they pay to draw, they're getting something they didn't want. And yeah, so Sweetie Belle's kind of scary. And in a pinch, you can also use her to find your own silver bullets. Go, oh, hey, I really, really need to draw the it's going to work. It's the only card in the deck that will save me. There's only one. Let's use Sweetie Belle targeting myself. These two cards are not. It's going to work. Let's put them in the discard. Oh, hey, now I drew it. Great. Or maybe I drew the gyro or whatever. So she's just very, very versatile card. Very, very scary card. Probably the most important friend in the deck. And I say that despite the next card on the list. F-Stop.
Oh, I thought you were going to say not on the list. It was the perfect segue.
It was. I didn't think of that, yeah.
The next card, not on the list.
So yeah, F-Stop. Yeah, this card.
So good.
So
Still
good.
possibly the best friend in the game, don't know.
No.
Gyro.
Gyro?
Yeah.
He's in here
Guidance
too.
Counselor.
Guidance. Well, she's not in the game
The
anymore.
She's in Nightmare.
Which is clearly the superior format. But...
I mean, obviously.
F-Stop is still pretty powerful. Paying 1 to get back any event in your discard. Oh, and by the way, you will have events in your discard. You know.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. There will be some events in your discard. It's pretty good. Like, you can't really pay AT to... Or you don't really have a good way of drawing specific cards you want, but you can keep reusing the cards that you have, and that's almost as good. Sometimes it's better. Your opponent is not going to be very happy when you go, bail out, next turn, bail out. Yeah, I'm just going to keep doing this.
Real sick of your bailouts.
Yeah. Popping corn. Get that back, popping corn, whatever. There's a lot of events in this deck that you are going to be very happy to cast more than once, and F-Stop is very happy to let you do that. He does only have 1 power, and which means he doesn't turn on other copies of himself, which is a little awkward if you played him off of a Madame LaFleur, because now you only have 1 white. Oops.
Yeah.
But hopefully you can get some other white somehow.
Yeah, you might want to be playing Sweetie Belle first anyway in that situation.
You typically don't want to play F-Stop until the mid game anyway, because you want events in your discard. You know, you don't want, if you have stuff in your hand to play, why are you using F-Stop?
Yep. Again, going back to the same thing of don't play stuff until you need to.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But when you do have F-Stop in play, if you have the AT and you have events in your discard, well, if you have at least 2 events in your discard, because you want to keep mod at 7, you probably want to use F-Stop every turn that you can, even if you're not intending to play that event right away.
Yep. It's just a safety measure.
Right. And then we've got one more major key card, who was mentioned already. Also 1 power, also has to do with events. It's Gyro.
I've never seen this card before in my life.
So we've got a lot of 1-of events in this deck. I actually think just about every event except for Bailout is a 1-of.
Yeah.
So how do you get that event that you want? You play Gyro. It's like you're running 3 of all of your events now.
I mean, not really.
Not really.
Kind of, but...
It's
Kind
like
of.
you're running 3 of any single given event at a point in time.
Yes.
Really, it's like you're running... Well, how many gyros do you have? 2?
There's 2 gyros.
Yes. So it's like you're
Yeah.
running 3 of any single given event at a point in time.
Right. And it's okay that you only have 1, because then F-Stop goes and get it back. Yay! Happiness!
Sure. That's what we can call it.
Well, it's happiness for 1 player. This is his 3 rec is a little awkward because you can't play him off of just 1 Factory Jack, but you can play him off of a Factory Jack and the other gyro in the deck, or both Factory Jacks. Or
To clarify, though, if you're still on Trading Traditions, you can totally play him off of just a Factory Jack.
or just mod.
I mean, yeah, that's true. Now, that's an interesting question here. You know, you've got the Singing Barrels, which can get you into purple to be able to play the Factory Jacks.
Yes.
And then you've got these white cards as well, but you don't really have any white cards with a low enough rec to justify naming white with trading traditions, right?
No, yeah, you always name purple with trading traditions every single time, because your the deck has 8 friends, quote unquote, and 8 resources to help flip mod early, and your friends are the 3 factory jacks, which are purple, the 2 Discord Wuzzes, which are no rec, and the 3 Madame Lafleurs, which are also no rec. So you need that purple.
Yep. But Gyro definitely makes sense in toolbox control.
Yeah. Even if you do have to pay 2 for him, because you have no purple in play, no trading traditions, and you've just got the Singing Barrel, he's worth 2 AT a lot of the time. You'd much rather play 1.
Sure. So we've got this toolbox suite of cards
Yeah.
that should be able to cover most situations.
You can get rid of friends, you can get rid of cards in their hand, you can get cards back from your discard, most of them. You can deal with the opponent's discard pile, you can get rid of their key card that you just never want to see again, or you could even find troublemakers.
So, given all these options, how do players new to this sort of style of control help avoid analysis paralysis?
Well,
He says his bugle goes into analysis paralysis himself.
Yes, exactly. No, it's basically don't play Gyro unless there is a specific threat that you need answered. And if there is a specific threat that you need answered, there's probably only going to be 1 card in the deck that you want to find. So you kind of just need to remember which card answers which threat. Is it a problematic troublemaker? Go find Cracking the Case. Is it a small friend? Go find Not on the List. Is it a big friend? Go find It's Gonna Work. And if it's a card in the opponent's hand, you're going to want to find Dream Seize. Unless it's a small card, then you get Heart Strongest Horses if they only have 2 cards in their hand. Or just keep whittling away with it with that and F-Stop. But generally the answer is each of these cards is a silver bullet designed to handle one specific class of things. If you can narrow the threat to one of those classes, then go find the correct bullet.
Now, when players are testing their own decks, especially if they're testing them in solitaire or goldfishing when they're not actually playing against an opponent, oftentimes you're just trying to reach 15 points as soon as possible and see if you can get there before your theoretical incredibly fast aggro opponent. At
Sure.
least that's what's commonly done with aggro decks, and farming decks, and combo decks, things like that. But control's obviously a little bit different.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to goldfish control because control is reactionary. What is the opponent doing? Well, let me adjust my strategy to match what they're doing. And if the opponent is literally doing nothing because they're a goldfish, kind of harder to plan around that.
So how important is it for a player running a control deck, especially a toolbox control deck, to know the ins and outs of their deck?
Oh, very important. You kind of need to know every single card in the deck at all times. So it is definitely a bit of an advanced deck. But if you feel you can handle those skills, it's pretty powerful. It can handle a lot of situations pretty handily.
Yeah, toolbox control is kind of a different style than some of the other control we've seen.
Yes.
You think about things like VBot that has more consistent copies of some of the same cards, and just because of the color selection in that particular deck, you don't have to run as many one-ofs, although you are still running a couple. You think about decks like Chaos Control using, Doctor Who's Time Loop that can recur the same thing turn after turn after turn that can disrupt a number of different strategies. A lot of these control decks are also going to require you to play reactionary and are also going to require you to know your deck, but not necessarily as intricately. One of the great things when you're working with toolbox control and Bugle, I'm sure you'd second this as well, is knowing your local meta and knowing what threats you expect to see most often, and then customizing your deck based on those threats. It's one of the great flexibilities of a toolbox deck.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you know that, for example, if you know Destiny Drain is not going to be useful, you can replace that with something else. Or maybe you know the opponent doesn't have any face-off tricks or chaos cards, and there's just none of those in the deck. Maybe Photo Finish is better than Changeling Throne for your deck. That's toolboxes are like, everyone has a toolbox, and they're all different, right? Like an actual toolbox. They have similar tools, but they're not the same tools. You adjust them for what you personally need.
Some of us have blades.
Yeah. Two of us have lace.
Shh. I haven't hurt myself yet.
So in a control deck like this, which may be slightly more advanced to play, I'm assuming this is kind of a high skill cap, high reward style of play. So what are some of the strengths of this deck?
So some of the strengths are, well, like I said before, we've got an incredibly easy to flip main. Arguably the easiest orange main to flip. Like, Applejack is also pretty easy, but there are more ways to disrupt that. Like,
I might fight you over that with Muffin Mare, but
Muffin Mare's pretty easy too. Yeah.
Especially since you can flip off your opposing character. But yeah, Maud is very easy to flip.
Yes. And she's also just a very versatile main. Like I said, which is kind of surprising for basically a main that just says I'm big, but she confronts problems basically by herself. You can even use her to confront your white problems just by playing the Singing Barrel and going, yeah, she's white. She's confronting that problem. And she also just scares off face-offs. Or she can start single problem face-offs, going, oh, you look like you really need those friends there. I'm just going to send them home. Win or lose, sending them home. So she's a pretty solid main, and you can also use her to beat up your own villains in a pinch if you need some points. Then some other strengths are, like, as a toolbox deck, you've got tools for just about every occasion. You may not be able to find it 100% consistently, but you'll find them more frequently than not. And it's very, very AT light. Can you scroll up to the AT bar?
No, it doesn't exist.
Oh, it doesn't exist?
No.
What? Oh, that's sad. Well, it has almost every card in the deck costs 1 or 2 AT. There are very, very few cards that cost 3, and then there's the one card that costs 5.
But she be a mighty pirate queen.
She does be a mighty pirate. And just the fact that you don't have to use very much AT is just very, very handy, because it lets you do stuff like use F-stop all the time. Or in a pinch, pay to draw, or whatever. When you're using less AT to stop the opponent's plans than they are to do their plans, you're in a good position. And the last strength is, I guess that was it, yeah. Those are the key strengths, yeah. It does have some weaknesses, though. Every deck has some weaknesses. One of the key ones is you do have to put in some kind of awkward cards in here, like because we're using mod, right? You have to put in some awkward cards, like Madame LaFleur. You're not going to see this outside of mod. It's not normally a great card. It's great for mod because it flips mod for 1 AT, but it's a low flip card. You can only use it when you have no white friends in play, and it only gives you 2 white rec. And we do have some 3 white rec cards in the deck. It's just a little bit awkward. Similarly, we have to run Seabreeze's Flower instead of Applejack's Epiphany, which is not ideal because this is an event-based deck. But Seabreeze's Flower helps you flip mod, and it's just the better choice. So it's a little awkward. It's basically where I'm going with that. It also much like the farm decks hate magical misfire, or farm decks hate cracking the case. This deck hates magical misfire a lot.
Yeah.
The day that you build a deck that doesn't hate magical misfire is the day I'll be very surprised.
I've
just
built
need-
decks that don't care about magical
We
misfire.
need an F-stop for the banish zone.
I mean, basically.
Ugh.
What could be wrong with getting cards back from Banish? Certainly nothing. Well, just
Nothing,
read the
yes.
manual.
No. So, but yes. So the trick, if you think your opponent does have magical misfire, and ways to get it back, like say Zipper will, wait for them to magical misfire you, then you magical misfire them. Now they don't have it and you do. Kind of a game of chicken there, but it's still not good no matter what. It turns mod back to 3. You can't use your f-stop. It's just bad, especially since, like we said before, all of your events are one-ofs. So yeah, sadness. It also, like Cannot You, AG, it has no real card draw. It does have event tutoring, but no card draw. The only card draw it has is in the form of paying AT to draw. Very sad. Well, I guess Nightmare Moon, does that count? No? Okay.
It depends. Is the other Nightmare Moon in play? Because then that's not great.
Very sad.
Then that's bad times for everybody.
Yeah, and the deck can also suffer from having trading traditions ripped out from under it. Like, you kind of do not... You don't want to pay extra AT to play your factory jacks. Like, you like them costing 2. Them costing 3 is not the best. Especially if you haven't been able to flip your main because you just had a bad draw. And then you draw that factory jack that you can't play because they got rid of trading traditions. And it's like, why? Why did that happen? No. Bad Hot Wings. Why did you make that go away? I liked that.
So how aggressively do you mulligan for factory jack in your opening hand?
If you don't have factory jack or Madame LaFleur, it is an immediate mulligan. You will keep, Madame LaFleur, you will keep just because it's basically everything you need. It's guaranteed to flip your main. Because you do normally need 2 cards to align, like Factory Jack plus Barrel, which is awkward and not great. Or Factory Jack plus Seabreeze's Flower, which is not great. Or even worse, Prim Hemline plus Singing Barrel. It's like, why? That was the worst. So Madame LaFleur is a keepable, but you would much rather have the Factory Jack.
Okay.
So good.
Factory jack is a great card.
She's a good card.
And I don't think we covered the mulligan in Ag Studies, but it's basically, do you have a troublemaker and do you have entry friends? And the entry friends are honestly more important than the troublemaker early.
Yeah.
You should never really be in a situation where you're only going to have the entry friend and not also have the troublemaker, because there's 14 in the deck and there's also the sneak attack. So that shouldn't really be a threat, but in the event that it is, keep the friend over the troublemaker. You'll find those eventually.
Yeah, because you've only got, what, 8 friends to flip your main?
You've got the 3 copies of Truffle, the 2 copies of Cheerilee, the 3 copies of Bookish Backup. Yeah. There's the 8.
But there's only 6 troublemakers in the deck.
6 troublemakers?
In this deck.
Yeah, in this deck.
Oh, and the other one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This deck only has 6, but it also has the sneak attack.
Again, toolboxy.
Toolboxy, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Playing Gyro to find sneak attack, to find Trixie. It's like, what? What just happened?
So this is definitely kind of a shift from what we were talking about last week with Hot Wings. Last week
Yeah,
we talked
a
about
bit.
card advantage being so good for aggro decks and being able to constantly keep your hand full. And here we're at 2 decks that are basically not using card advantage in the same way. Classic Rock benefits from being able to recur the same tools over and over again, which are very useful when facing single-minded decks. And Ag Studies benefits from not needing a lot of cards to do what it needs to do to begin with. But apart from that, they don't really have a lot of other card draw, and that's because your playing strategies and the strengths and things you need to focus on for each deck are going to differ depending on what your end game is.
Yeah, basically.
You know, you think about certain cards that are kind of your pet cards, your favorite cards, and if you were to run, say, I don't know, let's go with like a White Elves list, for example. Not all of these white cards might be appropriate. Sweetable might totally be appropriate, and Prem Hemline would also likely be appropriate, but F-Stop probably wouldn't be.
Probably not.
And so you got to really analyze what it is your deck is trying to do, and what cards within those colors are going to synergize with your strategy, and what can you afford to give up in terms of card spots. You have 45 slots in your deck, no more, Skitter.
He's in chat, you know.
I know he's in chat. I called him out.
Sitting there glaring at the chat screen, just be like, say something, I dare you.
Basically.
45.
45.
That's a funny
So we shouldn't point at Johnny Woo's deck in
53 cards.
Continentals
What?
2 years ago.
There we go.
How
There it is.
many cards was that?
It was over 50.
Oof. Without very good reason, you have 45 card slots and you've got to use them judiciously. And that's what these decks kind of highlight, is one picks a strategy that does not require a large number of card slots to function, and the other picks a strategy that allows it to answer just about everything, but doesn't dedicate too many of its card slots towards any one answer.
Right.
Kind of consistency versus versatility.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheese, Ari, you have any thoughts you'd like to add to either of these decks?
They're not combo.
One of them looks like combo, but it's not combo.
It has as many unique cards as combo decks, yeah.
It's also got gyros.
Yeah.
Does have gyros.
It is actually, spoilers, it's a combo deck.
I mean, slap a Big Mac and a mod in there and then we're talking.
I kind of a secret pleasure of mine is how many different Applejacks are in this deck.
Let's see, 1, 2,
Yeah, there's
3,
three.
4. That's Baby Applejack, 5. Another Baby Applejack, 6.
Are you looking at where are these
7,
other
Tempting Changeling Mimics.
Baby Applejack? Do you mean
7. Apple
mean Apple Bloom?
Yes,
Okay.
There's also Trading Traditions, don't forget that.
I counted that.
Oh, okay.
Tiny apple.
Yeah, Mod and Applejack are cousins after all, so, you know, they work together.
Yep.
Anyway,
Alright.
I think that's just about it for these decks, right?
Yeah, I think we've covered them about as well as we can. It's definitely a shift in playstyle from Hot Wings, but it's worth giving a shot. If you've got some of these cards, definitely put them together. See what you can do. If you're missing some of these cards, you know, try to find some acceptable substitutes. The farming deck, you might be able to sub out some of those troublemakers for, say, Lord Tyrek, if you absolutely have to. This one's not running too many ultra rares, thankfully. It's running 1 Throne, 1 Nightmare Moon, 1 Destiny Drain, 1 Catajack, 1 Cargo Loader.
Yeah, Lord Tyrek is actually kind of funny in that deck, because it eats the friend, but it's still 6, so it's still 3 AT to reduce it to 0.
Yeah, it's kind of amusing.
Yeah.
You could do it if you needed to. If you needed to get rid of something like, I don't know, Trixie or Starlight Glimmer. Although I'd recommend getting rid of Trixie over getting rid of Starlight Glimmer. Kind of. Snips and
Still the hate
Snails.
for a bunch of pinecone apologists or something here.
No. Changing Throne looks an awful lot like a pinecone, now that I think about it.
It kind of does. Is Trixie actually Chrysalis? Spoilers. No. But with that, I think that's basically going to wrap up our deck discourse for these particular series. Or for these 2 decks.
Yep, nope, that's the last one. We're never talking about another deck again.
What? But,
Never again.
But they're still the best archetype to come. We have to talk
Popper?
about the Popper,
Nightmare?
mid-range,
Nightmare?
Nightmare.
Fluttershy?
Sure. So I don't believe we're going to try any of this madness for deck
Oh no,
discourses
we
next
all
Sunday.
have regionals this upcoming week.
Yeah.
All of us.
So
And there's cons, and then there's more cons, and
Well,
then there's
there's
more
a week
cons.
between. There's a week between.
there's a
and
week
then there's-
between regionals and cons,
Yeah.
but then there's not really a week between cons and more cons and more
No,
cons.
and more cons
Correct.
and more cons and more cons. So there are no pros. There are only cons.
I like that. That's fun. So we're going to take a break for a week and wish everybody the best of luck in their regional events. Please
Unless
go
you
out
already
and,
went to
and
them.
play if you have an opportunity. They're so much fun. You'll meet a bunch of great players. You'll see a variety of decks you might not otherwise encounter. And you'll get some awesome promos in the process.
Good place to trade too.
Yep. Very, very fun times. So
Yeah.
if you get the chance to go to regionals, it's a good one to see, as I know not everybody does. But I think we're going to try to make them a little bit more visible. If I recall correctly, Commentary as Magic is actually going to be streaming the regionals coming from California. Is that correct?
Yeah, we can do that.
Oh dear. Well,
To be fair, I'd rather stream any of the other regionals, but, we do what we can.
We might also be streaming Seattle, maybe?
Maybe.
we're not
Alright.
streaming Denver. Can tell you that much.
No.
Well,
But we'll
maybe
make that Sorry, go ahead.
maybe Bugle needs to go buy a bunch of camera equipment.
Oh, it would overlap with yours.
At the
More
same
ca-
time.
More cameras equals better than.
Can confirm. More is always better. So we'll make sure that we make announcements regarding our upcoming streaming schedule for regionals. And of course, we are very excited to be returning this year to Gen Con and to BronyCon to be able to provide live streaming coverage of all the events there. Well,
Yeah.
as many events as we can.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be streaming every event at Gen Con.
Nonsense. It'll be fine. We'll just
So-
make
Including all
ourselves
the
ragged.
non-pony events.
Yeah, including all the non-pony stuff. We're going to do all of the Magic stuff, all of the Dragon Ball Z stuff, everything in the vendor hall. We're just going to have camera in every corner in the vendor hall.
Walkthroughs of True Dungeon. Despite no photography. Shh, don't tell them.
I don't know how this is going to work.
We'll
More
figure it out.
cameras. That's what you said, right? More cameras is
Well,
better.
I said more cameras. I didn't say all the cameras.
Well, all of the cameras is more than more of the cameras. Therefore, it's better.
But we will be streaming from both of those cons. If you don't have an opportunity to attend either of those cons this year, this is a great chance to see what goes on at some of the most competitive tournaments in North America. Which is usually utter madness.
Maybe there may have been some madness in the past.
There may be madness in the future. But following up on regionals this Sunday, or rather a week from today, 2 weeks from today, we'll be back with another deck discourse. And do you think it's time? Should we talk about it?
Nah.
Do we talk about that
Hmm.
anymore?
Nah.
I think we do. I think it's important to talk about these things.
Nah.
No? I
Nah.
think yeah. I think
Yeah.
we can talk about it.
Yeah.
You'll find out soon enough.
We're going to do a deck discourse series on combo decks.
There may be some combo decks coming out of the set.
And it's good to have these decks be visible, not just from regionals, but to also understand the inner workings of them and why they do what they do and what their matchups are like, so that you can know not only how to play these if you so choose, but also how to counter them if you expect to see them.
Never expect the Spanish composition.
Always expect the Spanish composition.
Composition?
Yeah,
is
sure.
this some
Composition.
music thing?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a song combo deck.
Yeah.
So we will be back.
Pile.
on Sunday, August
Well, no,
6th.
well, we're streaming.
Yes,
We're streaming this weekend,
right.
and then we will. We're streaming tournaments this weekend, and then the next weekend we'll have another deck discourse, and then more tournaments, and then more tournaments, and then more tournaments.
Yep.
Correct.
3 weekends in a row.
Yeah.
And then we'll take a break.
Yeah, we should like post this on like our social media pages.
Yeah, how would somebody get information about this if they wanted to find us, Argat?
What?
I'm throwing you under the bus here.
Speaking of buses, I'm looking at bus schedules.
They could ask Rainbow Shine.
They could ask Rainbow Shine, and what would Rainbow Shine tell them?
She
Okay.
wouldn't say anything. She'd be crying in the corner because she's banned.
She's back.
It's back for one.
People go ahead and sound
Oh,
off
you're
on
gonna-
on the social media pages. I'll get these in chat.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm kidding. We have this somewhere. I just don't remember the command for it.
That's fine. So, well, we have, you can find us on Twitter at CIM_CCG. You've got a Facebook page at Commentary is Magic. We've also got our Gmail account, commentaryiesmagicteam@gmail.com. You can also reach us on the Reddit. We post all of our schedules there. And yeah, I guess that's about it.
Yep, Skype as well.
Yep, Skype, Discord.
Hey Canterlot. Yep. Though if you're on Facebook,
In person.
just come- yeah. And
Yeah,
speak-
the other day actually, at our regional, or not regionals, our pre-release, someone saw my Cloud Chaser and Flitter mat and was like, "Oh, hey, I like your mat. You know who also would like that? Emperor Bugle."
They're like, you're right. He would like this map.
I would like this.
Yeah.
In fact, he does.
Can confirm. We've got, like we said, the busy con schedule, and that con schedule takes a little thing called data, which after 3 straight weekends of this, maybe more, is it's not cheap.
Time to nitpick. If it's a single thing, it's datum.
Yeah, but it's not a single datum.
But you said a little thing. Okay. Anyways.
You know,
Hush.
you are technically correct, which is the best kind of correct. That said, shut up.
So these
Yes,
events we do because we love this game and we want to be able to promote them and increase visibility for it and help share some of the tips and experiences with all of you who are watching. Thank you to all of you who are watching, but it's not free. So if you would like to continue to see content like this or any of our frequent streams or live streams from conventions, there is a donate button just below in
A
Fluttershy's
donut?
basket.
Yes, a donut button.
A donate button.
If
Excuse
you
me.
click it, we get donuts.
Yes, that's what we use.
We
that
don't actually
for.
buy donuts. We buy data. Data's
We-
more important.
We do buy data.
Donuts? I don't know.
Yeah. So every bit does help, especially with con season right upon us here.
Fluttershy likes bits.
And of course, if you have any feedback, we also welcome that. That is free to give, and that is at the addresses and locations listed above. But
I like that you say above, like the chat is just like floating in the space above you.
it is. That's what the cloud means, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, don't even get me
If
started.
you
Don't
have questions
even.
about the cloud, make sure to ask Rainbow Dash. She knows everything
Or
about the
any-
cloud.
Or any local Pegasi.
Ask your local.
Pegasus.
With that, though, I think that's basically going to wrap the stream up for tonight. Any last minute announcements from any of you guys?
Not that I can think of.
Go regionals.
Yeah.
Go to regionals, get ponies.
Go to 5
playmats.
regionals.
Get buys. Buys are good. Can confirm. Buys are good.
Get 5 buys. Is that what you're saying, Cheese?
I'm
Yes.
not saying get 5 buys. You
That's
may
what
only,
Cheese is saying.
well, you may only be able to get 3, so we'll see. But with that, thank you everyone for joining us again for another deck discourse. I am, as always, Grand Paws.
I'm Emperor Bugle.
Big cheese.
And the totally under the bus singing roll around our cat.
Have fun at regionals. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Possibly
absolutely.
sooner.
Bye.
Bye.